Before we get into the video, I have a couple announcements to make. Next week is going to be Ghostly Images, followed by on Halloween, the second Halloween special that I had planned. Then I'm taking a week off. That's because I'm getting married on October 30th, and I figured the first week of November I should take off. Technically, you're not going to miss anything because Halloween is on a Sunday this year, but since I normally upload on a Wednesday, I figured I'd give you a heads up ahead of time. Anyways, here's the video. Close your eyes and try to imagine yourself driving down a dark and lonely road. The sound of your music drowning out the dull hum of the engine. You pass a large building called Willowbrook Ballroom. You think nothing of it. As you continue down the road, you see a white figure walking down the street. As you come up to the figure, you see that it's a woman dressed in a long, white party dress. Do you stop? For the sake of this, let's say yes. You offer her a ride. She hops in. She doesn't speak much, she just rides with you. You begin to pass by a cemetery, and she speaks. She tells you to stop. You do, looking around for why she wanted you to stop, but as you turn to ask, she's gone. You have just encountered Mary, the phantom hitchhiker of Archer Avenue. She is buried in Resurrection Cemetery, which is where she gets the name she is commonly referred to as Resurrection Mary. Sometime in the late 20s, early 30s, Mary and her boyfriend went dancing at the O. Henry Ballroom, just southwest of Chicago in Willow Springs, Illinois. At some point, they got into an argument, and Mary stormed out of the ballroom and into the cold, wintry night in just her white party dress. She began hitchhiking down Archer Avenue, trying to get home. Whatever the argument was, she felt more comfortable getting a ride from a stranger than her significant other. She must have not noticed the headlights coming in her direction, possibly lost in thought, possibly happened too fast for her to react. But whatever reason it was, she couldn't escape her fate that night. She was hit by a car. The driver fled the scene, leaving the poor girl to die on the side of the road. Her parents, seeing that she hadn't come home, searched for her, finding her in the spot where she was hit by a car. They buried her in Resurrection Cemetery in a white dancing dress and matching shoes. The driver would never be found. Mary wouldn't rest. Her restless spirit soon began walking down the road between O. Henry Ballroom and Resurrection Cemetery. But that is the folklore behind Resurrection Mary. But the question is it just a folk tale, a campfire story, or is there some truth to the tale? My main sources for this video are an old episode of Unsolved Mysteries, Season 6, Episode 15, if you are inclined to go see it, as well as ChicagoHauntings.com, Weird World on YouTube, and ChicagoReader.com. Jerry Paulus was a young man in 1939. He had gone to a dance hall when he happened upon a young woman in a white gown. Jerry considered himself a bit of a ladies' man, and he approached her. Jerry described the girl as blonde, around 5'7" tall, with shoulder-length hair that curled at the edges. The girl was quiet, barely spoke a word. He only found out her name, which was Mary. But he did notice that her hands were as cold as ice. But they danced all night. He ended up leaving together. That is when she asked him to take her somewhere.
Can you take me down Archer Road?
He did, but as he drove past Resurrection Cemetery, all of a sudden she said,
Stop! Stop the car!
Once he stopped, he watched her walk towards the cemetery and slowly disappear. Confused, he went to the home where she claimed to have lived. There he found an older woman and he asked about Mary. The old woman told him that nobody by that name lived there. Then he saw a picture and pointed at it and told her that was who he was looking for. The older woman went quiet and then told him that that was her daughter and that she had been dead for 5 years. Over the years, people driving down Archer Avenue have claimed to see a woman wandering down the road. Mostly this is cab drivers. In 1979, a cab driver got lost on Archer Avenue. That is when he spotted a young woman on the side of the road. Figuring she was a local, he offered her a ride in exchange for directions. Without a word, the woman entered the back seat. She remained quiet. That was until they got to Resurrection Cemetery. Then, without warning, she said,
Stop! Stop the car!
He did, then started looking around before turning to the back seat and finding it empty. In 1980, Claire Lopez Rudnicki and her husband Mark and two friends were driving down Archer Avenue. With casual conversation, Claire looked out the window to see a figure walking down the road. The figure was bright, walking slow. Claire knew it was Mary right away. But her husband wanted to turn around and get a better look. When they did, the figure was nowhere to be seen. Mark claims what he saw was similar, but he added something to his story. What he saw was a brightly lit figure as they passed. But as they passed, the face was black, a void of nothing. Sometime in October of 1989, Janet Karl also traveled down the road on an evening drive. She passed Resurrection Cemetery when a figure ran across the road. Janet hit the brakes as hard as she could, but there was no impact. There was nothing, just an uneasy silence. That is just a small sampling of sightings of this ghost. Well, there is one more story, but it seems to be folklore. In 1976, her handprints were burnt into a fence that runs around the cemetery, but it turns out that it was a truck that hit the fence. So, we have learned of the legend associated with her, and we looked at the sightings of her. So who is Mary? If Mary is real, she is buried somewhere in Resurrection Cemetery. The issue with that is there are over 1,000 graves there, but the most popular opinion is that Mary is one of two women buried there. The first being Mary Bergovi, who died in 1934. She died young in a traffic accident. The issue is it happened in the Chicago Loop and nowhere near dance halls or Archer Avenue. But she could still be a restless spirit who beguiled Jerry. Her spirit might have been drawn to the dance hall where he was that night. The second possible suspect for who Mary is somewhat logical and it fits the time frame and location. The only issue is the girl is not named Mary. Her name is Anna Norkus, but her nickname was Maria, spelled M-A-R-I-J-A. Maria, as it's spelled here, is predominantly Croatian and Serbian, along with others, but I'm not going to name all the countries. It's another way of spelling Maria if you hadn't noticed, which is Latin for Mary. Anyways, in 1927, she was killed in an accident on Archer Avenue after leaving the O. Henry Ballroom on her way home. To me, she is more likely the plausible Resurrection Mary. Legends and folklore rarely have the right name for a person it is based on. I think Jerry Paulus's story got mixed into the Resurrection Mary story because the spirit was named Mary and she disappeared at Resurrection Cemetery. But because his story matches more Mary Bergovi, I think she is a separate story. There are other Phantom Hitchhiker stories out there, but Resurrection Mary is by far the most popular. So if you ever find yourself out on Archer Avenue, keep an eye out. You might see a lovely blonde woman walking down the road towards Resurrection Cemetery, dressed in a white dress. If you are bold, pick her up and drive her to the cemetery. Speak to her, and then you'll be another name added to those who have seen Resurrection Mary.